Hey guys, and welcome to another wrap up. Today I thought I would talk you through what I read in the month of August. Now, over the past couple of months, I seem to have fallen into a pattern of reading about 2 books a month, and I'm happy to report that I have at least stuck with that for August. So I completed 2 things, sort of 3 things, and started 2 other books, so I will go over all of those right now. So the first book that I read in the month of August was Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan, and I do have a full video review of this up if you would like more complete thoughts. Crazy Rich Asians is the story of a woman named Rachel Chu, who is a professor living in New York with her boyfriend Nick, who she, by the way, does not know is one of the richest, most eligible bachelors in all of Singapore. Now what this means is that when Nick invites her back to Singapore for his best friend's wedding, she doesn't quite know what she's getting into. Kevin Kwan definitely has some serious skills when it comes to writing. He writes really vivid characters, he writes really lavish settings really well, but at the end of the day, it ended up just not being quite the book for me. I know so many people love this series and think it's kind of the perfect lighter summer read, but personally I just wasn't super interested in the kind of topic of the upper echelons of Singaporean society, so that definitely dropped down a bit. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars, but again, if you want my full thoughts, go check out my video review, which I will link for you in the cards. Then at the end of August, I decided to attempt the Bout of Books readathon and did not do very well, mainly because it was an unexpectedly busy week and I literally did not have time to sit down and read. That being said, I did manage to complete 1 book off of my TBR, and that was Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. Now, this was a reread for me. This was the first time I had reread it, and I think I was, for the most part, experiencing the same level of enjoyment as I did the first time I read it. This is the story of a young woman named Catherine Morland who has never really seen outside of her family home until one day she gets invited to go to Bath and get introduced to society by some of her wealthier neighbors. While in Bath, she meets and becomes kind of infatuated with the lovely Henry Tilney, who then invites her to come to his family home, Northanger Abbey, to meet his father and sister. I have to say, I totally forgot how funny this novel is. I actually think this one is just so very funny that I laughed aloud in quite a few places. I will say that as a reread, I found the ending less satisfying than I remember it being the first time I read it. I think it's a little bit rushed, it's a little bit anticlimactic, and I think that's probably down to the fact that this was one of Jane Austen's earlier works and she didn't quite have the same level of skill just yet. That being said, I kept this as a 4-star rating on Goodreads and definitely will be picking this up again in the future. It's just a lot of fun. And then I wanted to mention a third book that I technically completed in the first few days of September, but that I read mostly in August, so I thought I would mention it here, and that was Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. Now, I listened to this one on audiobook, and I actually started it way back in November of 2016, but put off finishing it this long because I was enjoying it so very much that I did not want it to end. Now, Wives and Daughters is a bit of a Cinderella story in that we have a young woman named Molly Gibson who is the daughter of a small town doctor whose mother died when she was quite young. Now, while Molly misses her mother, she doesn't really seem to think that there's anything wrong with it just being her father and herself. She loves spending time with him, she loves kind of doing whatever it is that she wants to do, but her father starts to realize that it's probably not a good thing for Molly to be in a household with no other women. For starters, one of his apprentices takes a liking to Molly and tries to propose to her, at which point Mr. Gibson thinks, okay, this needs to be fixed. I gotta find me a wife to protect my daughter. So unfortunately, Mr. Gibson decides to marry the slightly ridiculous Claire Kirkpatrick, who, in addition to being a mother figure to Molly, will also bring with her her own daughter, Cynthia Kirkpatrick, into the household for additional female companionship. Add to this the cast of characters of Hollingford, which is the town that they find themselves living in, and the Squire Hamley's family, who is very close with Mr. Gibson and his daughter, and you get quite a cast of memorable, lovable characters. Now, going into the audiobook, I already did know the story, mainly because I have watched the miniseries many times. It's actually probably my favorite period drama miniseries that I've ever seen. I think it's safe to say that if you are somebody who liked Mansfield Park and that kind of slightly more timid, slightly more passive female main character, then I think you will really like Wives and Daughters, because Wives and Daughters does similar things to Mansfield Park, but in my opinion does does it a whole lot better. For starters, I have to say that Gaskell has created some amazing characters, starting of course with our main character Molly. Now Molly is very innocent. She's very good. She's probably the best, the morally best character in the entire book, and yet she's also human, and Gaskell gives her real human emotions like jealousy and anger and disgust. She would be the most lovely lunch or tea companion ever. Like, you could just spend a whole day with her just talking about books and flowers and walking in the countryside, and it would be glorious. I also really love some of the male characters like Mr. Gibson and Roger Hamley, who are both, I would say, very similar in that they are rather simple men who mean well and who feel very deeply for Molly, and yeah, I love them both. And while at the beginning of the book I really did not like the new Mrs. Gibson, Claire, or her daughter Cynthia, they both grew on me so much because they're actually very complicated, and she doesn't make them just annoying because, you know, they're the step family. She again imbues them with this really real, complex human quality that just, I mean, I honestly don't think there's a single character in the book that I was not a fan of. I actually really like Lady Harriet too, but anyways, I could go on. I ended up giving Wives and Daughters 5 stars, and I can tell you right now that this is one that I will go back to again and again, and that this is going to be one of my favorite books of 2017. To quickly touch on the books that I started in the month of August, first I have here Pigeon Blood Red by Ed Duncan, which I was sent for review, but unfortunately I think is going to be a DNF. This is a self-published crime book, and it just isn't doing it for me. I find myself getting really irritated with the writing itself. I think the story is intriguing, but I can't get past the writing itself. So unfortunately, I think this one is going to be a DNF from me. But the other book that I picked up during the month of August was Five Came Back, A Story of Hollywood and the Second World War by Mark Harris. This is a nonfiction book about the American filmmakers that went to war with the soldiers during World War II to record history, to create propaganda films, and to give the American people a sense of what their boys were doing, you know, in what seemed like an entirely different world. I have to admit I have only read the prologue at this point, but I am happy to report that I have liked the writing so far. It was very easy to get through and was very engaging. So I'm really hopeful that I will finish this in the month of September, mainly because the Netflix, I guess, mini-series of this is out, so I really want to read this and then watch the series to see how they complement each other. So that was what I read in August 2017, and I think I had a good mix of decent books and things I really loved, and it was kind of nice to get back into some classics because I feel like over the past couple of years especially, I just haven't been reading a ton of them. If you guys have read any of these books and you would like to chat with me about them down in the comments below, you know I always appreciate that. But for now, that is all I have, so thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you next time. Bye! So to quick okay, let's try that again. Chat with them that was a brain fart in real time.